Welcome to FPTV New Releases, with myself, Andrew Sumner, and Forbidden Planet's mighty head book buyer, Laura Dodd. How are you, Laura?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. And we are privileged to be joined by two epic novelists, Mr. Stephen Baxter and Mr. Peter F. Hamilton. How are you guys today?
Very well, thank you.
Yes, fine, thanks.
It's great. It's lovely to see you both. Thanks for joining us. This is one part of a dual session we're doing to talk about your latest novels, Stephen's World Engines creator and Peter's Saints of Salvation. We're going to do one session on each. So let's start with Stephen's World Engines creator. Over to you, Laura.
Yes, so what can you tell us about your newest book without too many spoilers for the previous one?
Tricky.
Ooh.
Well, it's a second of a duology, and that's I've grown into the habit of doing these things over the years, like a trilogy, but without the boring middle bit, you know, but with room to expand. And it's about well, most of my books are about like our place in the universe, and in this particular book, it's about our place in the spectrum of all possible solar systems. Now, given the what we know now about the fantastic array of planetary systems and so forth out there, and here we are in this one, which we thought was unique at one time. So it's really me trying to sort of grapple with those ideas. In particular, we live in an unusual solar system as far as we can see, because we've got no super Earths. So the Earth is the biggest rocky planet, and then you've got the gas giants bigger than us. But in most systems, you have swarms, possibly of these super Earths, rocky Earth worlds bigger than the Earth. So that's odd. And the other thing, of course, that's all about the solar system is that we're here, that there's life here. So we seem to be, having thought we were typical, we now seem to be in an unusual place, you know. So my fictional hat started spinning with that idea, and it was maybe there's been some kind of meddling with the origin of the solar system. Somebody's swept out the super Earths or stopped their formation in the first place in order to create a crucible for life, maybe, you know. But who knows what was lost by that? So it's set in the book. What was set in the near future, and we go into lots of alternate Earths and parallel universes in the second book in particular, as these characters try to figure out what's going on, who meddled with us. Was it benevolent or not? Not always, because there's, you know, some of these things are sort of destructive acts, as worlds that might have been were destroyed. But I think the characters are interesting in this. I started with an old character of mine called Malenfant, Reed Malenfant, who he popped in my books about 20 years ago, and I think it was quite prophetic. He's a space entrepreneur like Bezos, you know. He's not a very good one, but that's his dream as an ex-astronaut. And he thinks he's Robert Heinlein, you know. He thinks he's competent. He's gonna kickstart an expansion into space. In fact, he's more like Philip K. Dick, because he blunders around into incomprehensible universes inhabited by incomprehensible aliens and so forth. So he's projected into the future after a shuttle crash and a bit of cryogenics, and it's a post-scarcity future. We're beyond the climate crisis. We're living within our means and so forth. But, you know, there's this big mystery around what are we doing here in the first place. And he's met by a young girl called Deirdre. He's woken up in Birmingham. No, he's working in London, netting to Birmingham. So futuristic Birmingham. And Deirdre is just drawn to him because she in an incoherent way, she's drawn to these mysteries as well. He is the nearest thing to a witness of the past that she can find to as a guide, a mentor. So this was going to be a book about Malenfant, right? But Deirdre just kind of grew and grew. She's just quite an innocent. She's not a guide. She's a questioner at the beginning, but she becomes more and more purposeful through the course of that book. And in the second book, as they go on to challenge the creators, builders of the world engines on a much larger scale. And I found that the reception to Deirdre has been great. Given I didn't really invent her, she just sort of emerged. It's a sort of token of the new world, you know, but she just emerged and swallowed the whole thing. And young people, frankly, I do meet a few, said they really like Deirdre. She's their kind of character, you know. She's in a bewildering world which has been wrecked by previous generations, but she's trying to find a way through. So I think I've hit on a chord there. I'm quite proud of that. So that's essentially it. So I think that means there's too many spoilers in there because I haven't actually told you what the great secret of the universe is.
I think you very artfully laid that out without getting into any spoilers at all. The thing I was interested in is this designed to be the second part of a duology, and that's it for those two books, or are you left with further, you know, ideas to explore within this narrative, within this universe?
I think possibly, but it's all part of the manifold, which is my multiverse. That's where Manifold came from sort of 20 years ago. It's another kind of meddling by the aliens, and he ends up wandering between these multiverse, alternate history realities, but it's alternate cosmologies as well. So when I was working on World Engines, I hadn't really thought of that, but it occurred to me to link it back, to use Manifold again, because he's got his fan base as well. So it's an infinitely diverse background. So there are plenty more options to explore maybe in the future. And in some ways I feel quite prophetic in a way. In another way, I wasn't reading the comics much at that time, but you know, the DC Infinite Crises and all that comic multiverse, which all over. We've just been slugging our way through Supergirl Series 5.
Yeah, right. Well, it's heavy on the multiverse stuff, isn't it?
It just explodes with multiverses, and you know, you're expected to understand the language now. So I'm hoping that audience will be able to sort of see what's going on here without too much sort of hand waving from me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the effects of DC, particularly having explored the multiverse concept, is that as a literary device, as a concept, it's much more familiar to people outside of hardcore science fiction now. Now, pretty much everybody grasps what it is, and you know, and now that it's been picked up by all the TV universe shows, and is going to be the fulcrum for the movie universe as well. I think that must be pretty gratifying actually, to see these things that you've invested a lot of time, effort, and creativity in over such a long career. You know, to then be able to have people just readily pick it up by going, "Let me tell you about what the concept of the multiverse is," you know, and then get into it.
Yes, quite. So it's like yes, I think I'm slightly ahead of the game there, although there's plenty of multiverses in the past. But yeah, it's very easy for people to understand, and they enjoy following the sort of alternate histories and so on. I do have a passion for exploring histories, I have to say. I've got no historical background beyond O-level, you know, but it is really interesting to tweak these things and see where they go and follow. But alternate cosmologies as well. I mean, in Creator, you have different versions of the solar system. Most of them have got at least one super Earth in there, others thrown around, and it does make a huge difference. I mean, a super Earth where Mars is could well be habitable because it would have retained its water, retained its heat, its atmosphere, and so forth, even though it's further from the sun. So we could have had that would be a more likely origin for life, actually, if it existed. So that's a fantastic place to explore.
Wow. And yeah, very interesting. So you have a degree in mathematics and obviously an interest in science. Does this kind of help inform your writing?
In a way, but it was a kind of feedback process, really. I was really into science fiction from a very early age. 5 years old, watching Fireworks or 5 and Thunderbirds, all those things. And the comics, I mean, Superman was my hero in the comics, I think because of the space opera kind of elements in there. And then at school, I started reading Asimov and Heinlein, all this stuff. So some madman had populated the school library with science fiction book club editions of all these classics. It was just there, you know. And I've done my best. I've been back to the school since then, giving speeches and so forth, handing out the prizes, populating it with later versions of Peter Hamilton and so on, you know, to infect a new generation. So I was growing up with science fiction. I loved it. I was writing science fiction stories when I was about 15 or 16, and the teacher helped me with that. Actually showed me how to do it professionally. Didn't sell for years. But I was but I was drawn into science. You know, Apollo was going on, and the Mars probes. I was drawn into science really because of the science fiction. I was good at maths. That's my talent in that area. So I went into mathematics, and I did a PhD in engineering, but I didn't like the idea of an academic life. You know, it's like being a writer in a way. You're working from one short-term contract to the next. So I went into industry and I was mucking around, but I was gradually building up my writing career. And there came a point where I was dipping in industry. You know, I got a promotion refused, but my books were ticking off a bit. So you know, I went for the full thing. But so really, it was SF that drew me to science. I think. Who knows, with the maths ability, I might have gone into sociology or something like that. Stats. Yeah. I could have been one of the government stats advisors, couldn't I?
Yeah, I mean, you had a narrow escape there, frankly, mate. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting on the, you know, Dominic Cummings, within that star chamber of morons. So it's such a fascinating way into being a novelist. I think, you know, being from Liverpool, being and then, you know, being a mathematician, being an engineer, you know, to have that drive, the literary career that you've had, I think it's really quite fascinating. And of course, you mentioned Peter, who's here with you at the moment. Something that Laura and I wanted to ask is, you guys do a lot of events together, so we're assuming that you're big fans of each other's work.
Well, I would say so. It's. I think fan is the wrong word in a way, because we've known each other, haven't we, since we just started being published. I think we first met at some convention where I think we probably only published short stories, and so we've got these parallel. It's not. I think fan is. The word feels more removed to me. Somebody you haven't really met or known. You know. But with Peter's work, I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was the Newtonian Alchemist, which is probably on the shelf behind it in there somewhere. Yeah. That just knocked me out. I was asked for a blurb for it, and I said, well, it compared to Ian Banks was the best compliment I could pay it, because I think it does. You know, it's this big scale hard SF stroke space opera, but with all the kind of sociology stuff, which is the real interest in there. So yeah, that was Peter's launch, and off he. Well, he's still here.
Yeah.
And how did you discover Stephen's work, Peter?
Same way. Every time we meet, we try and remember which convention it was we met at, because it was so long ago. Somewhere on these shelves is actually the paperback of Raft, the HarperCollins edition, which I think is about 91, 92. And it's signed by the author, because I met an author at the convention. So yeah, I mean, I've been reading Steve since then. Yes, you're right. Fan isn't quite the word. Colleague, admirer, whatever. Yeah. Well, yeah. Constant reader.
Yeah, friend, peer, admirer, constant reader. I think that's. I thank you for sharing that with us, guys. That's very interesting. And we're going to bring this session to a halt now. We have been talking about Stephen Baxter's World Engines Creator, the second in his duology, which began with World Engines Destroyer, and you can pre-order it and order it from the links attached to this video. And we'll be back with the second half of these. We'll be flipping it around, and we'll be talking to Stephen and Peter about Peter's Saints of Salvation, the latest in his salvation sequence. Thank you very much, guys. That's been awesome. Really lovely to meet you both. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.